Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond. And Spectrum tonight.
The implications of today's constitutional ruling on the immunity of political appointees. Also, what lessons can our political leaders take from this ruling? Today, the Constitutional Court delivered a landmark ruling indicating that presidential appointees have no immunity from civil or criminal liability over their personal acts while performing duties and functions as directed by the appointing authority. According to the court, only a sitting president is immune from prosecution as granted by the Constitution. However, once out of office, that person, that is the president, can also be prosecuted. The Constitutional Court ruling indicates that even the president who delegates or assigns duties cannot grant that immunity to anyone else. A panel of 5 justices led by Deputy Chief Justice Alice Mpaji Bahikeme unanimously agreed that the vice president is not covered under the law providing for immunity. Former Vice President Professor Gilbert Bukenya was challenging his trial by the Inspector General of Government before the Anti-Corruption Court for his alleged role in the 2007 Chogam car deal scandal. He had argued that his actions during the purchase of the 2007 Chogam vehicles were undertaken on behalf of the President, who is himself immune to prosecution. This ruling clears the trail of the former Vice President in the Anti-Corruption Court and the Inspectorate of Government. The Inspectorate of Government has already indicated to the court about this ruling and their desire to carry on with their prosecution. Now, this ruling has a lot of implications which are relevant to the political leadership in Uganda today as far as how they should conduct themselves while executing duties assigned to them, and most important, how they should handle public resources. So tonight we will look at this landmark ruling to establish the lessons that other political leaders can take and how crucial it is to the fight against graft in Uganda. Our guests tonight, Mr. Ladislaus Rwakafuzi, Senior Human Rights Lawyer and Senior Partner with the Rwakafuzi Company Advocates. You're most welcome, Mr. Rwakafuzi.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Ladislaus Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL, also a commentator on political and human rights issues. You're most welcome, Mr. Opiyo.
Thank you very much, Edmond, and good evening, listeners.
Mr. Rwakafuzi, the Constitutional Court has delivered what many are now describing as a landmark ruling today. It's being argued that this ruling might be a deterrent to impunity, abuse of power, and an energizer to fight against corruption. How do you look at this ruling in light of the issues behind it?
Well, I have not read the ruling personally, but I've heard excerpts of it from radio and what you have just told us. But I'm very much satisfied with the findings of the Constitutional Court. I do not see how the court could have ruled otherwise, because this question of immunity goes to the root of the question of governance, and if people are given so much power and to exercise without any accountability, I think it would be a very big disaster. It is very important that the court has saved Ugandans, and he said, look here, whatever you do, you are answerable to the people, and that you cannot hide behind immunity. And also the court has reminded even the sitting president that when he is out of his chair, we shall also go after him to find out what he did for Chogam and several other things, the people who have died during the protests and that kind of thing. It's a reminder that these cases are not closed, and the time for accounting will come. I'm very glad about with the findings of the Constitutional Court.
So what can we expect in future? The president delegates his powers. People are supposed to carry out jobs in a swift, very short notice. The vice president had to get things moving.
Yes.
He jumped some steps. Why want it to slow down, bog down government operations?
Well, that's a different matter, because ultimately the criminal court will hear the arguments of Mr. Okenya. The criminal court will determine whether or not Kenya acted in good faith. And so the criminal court still has its work to do. The Constitutional Court has not determined this matter. All it has said is that, please, Mr. Bukenya, do not rely on the question of immunity. Go ahead and be prosecuted. But Professor Bukenya can still raise these issues, that he acted in good faith and in public interest, and that he never wanted to defraud anybody. And actually, there could be no evidence of any fraud or any loss. So all these defenses are still open to the professor.
And he has a chance to clear his name.
Yes, he still has his chance to clear his name.
Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, what's your reading?
Well, first and foremost, I share the views of my senior land colleague on the importance of this ruling. I think that this ruling is significant in many ways. But even before I look at the significance of this ruling, I think it is important to lay the background to this decision. Because the Honorable Professor Bukenya was charged before the Anti-Corruption Court charged together with a company for the improprieties, the flouting of rules during the procurement of services and goods in the run-up to Chogam. When Bukenya was charged before the Anti-Corruption Court, he raised a number of constitutional issues that he thought needed interpretation and went to the Constitutional Court. So the Constitutional Court decided today on the issues of interpretation, but not on the criminal liability or lack thereof of Professor Bukenya. So Professor Bukenya is still a suspect before the Anti-Corruption Court and will be tried to the fullest of the law if that is the interest of the prosecutor. So today's ruling is significant in four ways. I think the first and foremost is that it defined very clearly the principle of presidential immunity. It defined very clearly the boundaries of this principle. It defined who can benefit from it and who cannot benefit from it. The decision of the court are that whereas the president can delegate his functions, he cannot delegate immunity, because immunity is a creation of the law. So every civil servant who is delegated by the president to perform any function has a criminal and civil liability for any wrongful acts arising from that. I mean, from the execution of that power. So whether you are the vice president, you are the prime minister, you are a presidential advisor, you are the president's wife or his girlfriend or his AD.
Oh, he doesn't have girlfriends, he only has a wife.
Well, I'm sure he has friends who are girls.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to.
And it's not wrong.
I'm using the word girl.
Our president is still energetic.
No comment.
So anybody delegated by the president enjoys no immunity and therefore has got to execute the function in accordance with the law. That has been laid out very clearly today by the court. The second thing that the court talked about is the principle of the powers, the remit of the powers of the DPP. Because part of Bukenya's claim was that he's being selectively prosecuted.
Yes.
Whereas others are being let scot-free, he's being discriminated under Article 21 of the Constitution. I think the court quite clearly said today that the prosecutor, the DPP, has the mandate to choose who to prosecute on the basis of the evidence available to him.
Yes.
And that cannot be interpreted to mean discrimination. So Bukenya's trial, whereas his other partners in crime, I say this in court,
yes,
have been let off the hook, at least for now. Bukenya is being prosecuted. That is within the power of the DPP to do so, and also within the power of any other body under the Constitution that is mandated to prosecute, like the office of the IGG.
Yes.
So that has been made very clear. I think that's important. The third issue which Bukenya raised before the court was the question of an IG or IGG, as you like, acting in an acting capacity.
Yes.
Because the Constitution provides for the position of the Inspector General of Government, We do not have a substantive Inspector General of Government. We have an acting Inspector General of Government.
And a substantive deputy.
And has no substantive deputy.
Well, he is the substantive deputy, but he's also acting.
Yeah, exactly. So the court quite clearly, I think, today pronounced itself on this, because this has been going on for long.
Yeah.
There was this advice by the Solicitor General about the Vice Chancellor of Makerere, who is holding office in acting capacity under the the University and other Tertiary Institutions Act. There was all this
for 20
noise about it, and then I think many people have been thrown out of Parliament for holding office in acting capacity.
Right.
So I think that issue today has been settled by the court, that somebody acting
still has the powers.
because they have been given the powers to do so. Although I think that perhaps there's need for a deeper discussion on the actual implication of somebody acting, not holding office substantively. But I think what the court today said is that somebody like Rafael Bako, who is holding the office of the IGG in acting capacity, can carry on the functions of the IGG. The last and more important issue is the question of the remit of the powers. You see, I think there has been a lot of misunderstanding, especially by those who are close to the state, or those who are close to the president. I think they think that they are almost like the president, so they have the mandate to do whatever they want, and that they will not be prosecuted.
Right.
I think that impunity that my learned friend referred to as impunity, it's been clearly mentioned today that is against the law, and you enjoy no immunity. But just to emphasize that even the president doesn't enjoy full immunity. Only enjoys immunity
while in office.
And only against certain offences, because he can actually...
Civil offences, not criminal.
Even criminal.
Yeah.
He can be dragged to court for an electoral offence, for example, under the Electoral Commissions Act, and even under the Constitution. So that immunity is even not an absolute immunity. He has exceptions. So people who are holding power by virtue of delegation from the president need to know that they enjoy no protection. They will be prosecuted for all the theft that they have done, for all the killing they have done, for all the mismanagement of public resources that they've done.
All right, I would like to underline this thing. He's saying they're immune. The president can only delegate the function. He cannot delegate his immunity. It's held as an individual, not even to his wife, his beloved wife.
No.
Immunity is conferred upon a particular person by law.
And in this case, by the Constitution.
By the Constitution in this case.
Yes.
Now, whereas the president can delegate his duty, he has no power to delegate the immunity.
So he can delegate powers.
He can delegate
and
powers.
Anyone who's holding those powers, he can do, and he can walk like the president, talk like the president, but they'll still be held responsible.
If they mess up, they will be dragged before the courts of law.
Yeah. So that would include RDCs,
yes,
who exercise a lot of power in the districts. These people, they say they claim to be acting on behalf of the president, and they therefore, in exercise of that power,
they can arrest and harass.
Yes,
harass a lot of journalists.
Exactly, they can do so much. So I think they have been reminded that, you see, you cannot, behind the immunity of the president, to do certain things which are criminal. You are personally liable. It is very good, you see, for us who have been in this human rights field for some time. Much of our frustration arises from this presumed immunity. Some of these people yes, you see, they presume this immunity and they go ahead and act as if they are above the law. So now they have been reminded that equal protection of the law and Article 21 is for everybody.
I also think the more important thing, I think the end result is Bukenya's trial is good for this country.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Right.
Bukenya's trial, in my view, will for once put before the courts the dealings of government behind closed doors.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because part of the evidence the state seeks to use against Bukenya are minutes of the cabinet subcommittee meetings. And these are things that have been kept away from the public.
So in other words, the Constitutional Court has helped us.
Because
you see, if it had shelved this matter, we would never know what was behind the scenes. Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, Kenya could have been really acting collectively with so many people. We want to know which people are those. You see, if we lost this money, if we lost money, which other people were involved in this loss? Yes.
And I did mention on this show.
Yeah.
I gave you a couple of weeks back a chronology of events. That Bukenya got charged, Bukenya hired FDC-leaning lawyers,
Yes.
Bukenya goes to the Constitutional Court and asks for minutes of cabinet meeting and letters exchanged between him and the president.
Right.
And then a couple of days later, the president comes and says,
The man is innocent.
actually, this man doesn't seem to be guilty.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
So I think what the court has done, I think it is important. And I only pray that the Honorable Raphael Bako has the guts to take this trial to its logical conclusion. Because a lot of things will come out, and the things that we've never been told about the happenings of government will come out to the fore.
Mr. Rwakafuzi, what can we expect down the road as this trial goes on?
Yeah, the excitement in the courts now have been reignited because this is not an everyday trial. We want to know what took place behind the scenes. And I think we are all going to benefit, like my friend has said. It is a great time.
It's a great time.
Yes.
We're all going to benefit.
Yes, but of course, Kenya will not, in the short run, may not benefit. You would not want this limelight and that kind of thing. But when everything is said and done, it may be in his interest to clear his name.
Right.
Yeah.
When we first discussed this case, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, you said that at some stage you are looking into the future. You said at some stage some names are going to be mentioned, and then the case is likely to be closed. What's your reading of it now?
You see, a trial of Bukenya is not a trial of just Bukenya, but a trial of the conduct of ministerial duty by Bukenya, his colleague, and his bosses,
Including the president.
including the president. I mean, of Uganda. In fact, in that show, I mentioned that the trial of Bukenya is akin to the trial of Joseph Kony to the ICC.
Yes.
You cannot try Kony without necessarily determining the role of the president or the government of Uganda in the war in the north. So you cannot try Bukenya without necessarily examining the role of the president, the role of his other ministers.
Presidency. Let's separate the two.
The role of the presidency,
Yes.
and the role and the role played by the other ministers who have now been exonerated by Parliament, or who the IGG has chosen not to prosecute. So I think that if Bukenya's trial, and I say this if with a big if,
Yes.
goes ahead to its full conclusion, I would love it actually to go ahead. We shall know exactly the role of the person of the president or the presidency in the Chogam mess. We shall know exactly the role of Mr. Sam Kutesa, who at one point was a shareholder in Motocare,
Yes.
a co-accused with Bukenya in this case. We also know the role of the now Prime Minister, who was by then, I think, the Minister of State for Security, but also the NRM Secretary General in the Chogam mess. But also, more importantly, I think that this ruling has direct implication on Parliament. That's the Parliament that stood and exonerated these people for being, not guilty, relieve them of responsibility. If this trial goes ahead and it is concluded, we shall expose the deficiencies in Parliament, the political intricacies in the eighth Parliament, the motivating factors behind allegedly exonerating other members of Parliament. I mean, other guys who are involved with Bukenya. So I think this trial.
Kenya was also exonerated by Parliament, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yes. So this trial is going to focus the limelight
on the 8th Parliament.
On the 8th Parliament.
Right.
So I think that's important. That's important for our own parliamentary democracy. So these four people, and actually the entire government structure and machinery, will be at trial. Even the office of the IGG, that after the remark by the head of state that Bukenya is innocent, really have the guts to actually prosecute this guy.
Up to the end.
Will he? Well,
of course,
you can answer that.
His authority is being challenged in Parliament.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we will have to move forward. But you mentioned the 8th Parliament, yes?
Yeah, but even beyond just the office of the IGG and the person of Raphael Bako,
yes,
I think that even the courts are here under test. Should this case go until the very end, will the court bulge to the presidential statements that Bukenya is innocent?
So far they have done well.
So far they have done well.
Yes.
But we are watching to see the next step that the lower court will take as far as determining Bukenya's innocence or guilt.
And you say it will be an indictment on the 8th Parliament?
Yes.
It will take away marks?
Yes, I think so.
Well, some people
the marks that they have lost already.
Some people don't think they might have a lot of marks. Some people think the 8th Parliament was a very weak Parliament. They give more credit to the 6th Parliament, where Norbert Mao was, and John Ken Wichams and other people. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio, and tonight, what are the implications of today's Constitutional Court ruling on the immunity of political appointees? What lessons can our political leaders take from this ruling? You can contribute to this discussion. Later, I'll read out the telephone numbers when the time comes, but you can also send a text message. Type the word Spectrum in a phone browser, message, question or comment with your address and name, and send it to 7197. We'll be back after this very short break.
Let's show you how to multiply your savings, starting with the cash beneath the mattress to the savings in the bank that aren't making money. Let's turn your savings into somethings with Super Save Reloaded. Super Save Reloaded brings you savings and investment accounts which offer you a sure and predictable way to multiply your savings. For more information about Super Save Reloaded, ask at your nearest Stanbic Bank branch.
Stanbic Bank, moving forward.
3 times a year, every year for the past 6 years, I have been stressed going to pay school fees. I've woken up at the crack of dawn, taken 2 taxis and a board. Finally arrived, filled out the forms. I have lined up between a guy with kavubuka and a guy with a nasty cough. And I've waited and waited, but no more now. I have moved on with MTN mobile money. So now I pay school fees directly from my mobile while I spend time with my children.
When you move on with MTN mobile money, your children can move on to greater things. And now everyone can pay school fees with MTN mobile money. So be one of the 100 people to win 100,000 shillings towards your next school shopping when you pay school fees with MTN mobile money.
MTN, everywhere you go.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. What are the implications of today's Constitutional Court ruling on the immunity of political appointees? What lessons can our political leaders take from this ruling? Our guests tonight, Mr. Ladislaus Rwakafuzi, Senior Human Rights Lawyer and Senior Counsel, Senior Partner with the Rwakafuzi Company Advocate, and Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL, also a commentator on political and human rights issues. Mr. Rwakafuzi, let's look at the ruling and the doctrine of collective responsibility. We've touched it a little bit before. In government, there's an argument that if cabinet takes a decision, all ministers are bound by it, and that it must be a decision that they must articulate, they must press forward, press with it forward. Yes. The former Vice President, Mr. Kenya, was chairing a subcommittee of cabinet, and now it's coming out clear that he must be held to account for decisions taken by entire group. Doesn't this ruling weaken the doctrine of collective responsibility?
No, it doesn't. It still remains his defense in the criminal court. What the criminal court has said is that he should not claim immunity. Immunity has not been conferred upon him as a vice president or even as acting president, or a person delegated with the powers of the president or of the functions of the president. But when this matter comes for trial, all these remain defenses for him. They have not been ruled out. But the criminal court will consider whether there was a criminal intent, a fraudulent intent, and whether he's guilty. The criminal court is more strict, by the way, in terms of looking at the evidence. Yes, yeah. So the Constitutional Court says go ahead and defend yourself. You see, so these defenses are still available for him. That he acted in the interest of government and the interest of everybody, and he did not act alone. So all these are matters that go to show whether there was criminal intent or not. So the defenses are still available for him, but the Constitutional Court says still he wanted this by running to the Constitutional Court. He wanted to make sure that there is no trial of him. Yes. But now the court says no, you go. You are not immune. So, but even when he appears before
he still has a chance to defend himself.
Yeah. But let me just add to what my senior land colleague has said, that the principle of collective responsibility derives from Article 117 of the Constitution. And if you may, let me just read it directly for you. That ministers shall individually be accountable to the President.
Yes.
For the administration of their ministries, and collectively be responsible for any decision made by Cabinet.
Yes.
My reading of this article,
that's collective responsibility,
is that it does not exempt anybody from criminal and civil liability for any actions taken as a person.
Yes.
Whether you took that decision on behalf of the Cabinet or you took that decision together with others. That if any Cabinet committee or Cabinet meeting does anything unlawful, he actually can't suffer liability for it.
Yes.
So the responsibility of collective responsibility, or the principle of collective responsibility, does not, in my view, exempt anybody from liability, either criminally or in a civil case.
Yeah,
Let's try to, just before we leave that.
Yes, you know, it means that you can collectively
agree.
You can collectively agree to commit an offense. So even if they choose only to prosecute you, only one person, you cannot say that we were many. You see,
that's what.